Chapter 1. The Stranger at the Gate. The train jolted to a halt at Rajpore Station, its platform shimmering in the fierce heat of an Indian summer afternoon. Hercule Poirot emerged, his small, precise figure a study in contrast to the sprawling disorder around him. He adjusted his Panama hat with a deft touch, his polished shoes gleaming against the dust. The air carried the heady perfume of jasmine, mingling with the cries of hawkers and the distant pulse of the bazaar, a world apart from the clipped calm of England. Poirot's green eyes, sharp as a cat's, surveyed the scene with quiet intensity. A servant in crisp white livery, adorned with a crimson sash, approached with a bow. "This way, Sahib," he said softly, taking Poirot's valise. They proceeded to a Bentley idling nearby, its engine a low hum in the oppressive warmth. The journey to the British residency revealed a land divided. The vibrant chaos of Rajpore town gave way to orderly lawns and stately palms lining a gravel drive. Ahead loomed the residency, a splendid fusion of British rectitude and Mughal grace. Its white walls rose beneath domed roofs, the broad veranda a shield against the sun, while gardens of hibiscus and jasmine blazed with colour. Poirot stepped from the car, noting a Rolls-Royce parked beside, a symbol of colonial opulence. Inside, the entrance hall enveloped him in coolness, its marble floors reflecting the stern gazes of British portraits. Indian tapestries lent a softer note, their threads whispering of the land beyond these walls. The air thrummed with the clatter of punkah fans, heavy with the scent of impending rain. As he followed the servant toward the veranda, the murmur of voices grew louder, tinged with tension. Poirot paused at the threshold, his curiosity piqued. Through the open arches, he glimpsed a tall man with a clipped moustache and rigid posture, Sir Reginald Thorne, the British resident, he deduced, locked in a heated exchange with another figure, regal in bearing, his attire rich with Indian elegance. "Cannot simply disregard the agreements, Your Highness," Sir Reginald said, his voice cutting through the humid air like a blade. The other man's eyes flashed with defiance. "Those agreements were made without our consent, Sir Reginald. The land is our birthright." His tone carried the weight of royalty, Prince Vikram Singh, no doubt. Before the dispute could escalate, a graceful woman in silk stepped forward, her voice soft but firm. "Gentlemen, perhaps this discussion can wait." She turned, catching sight of Poirot, and her face brightened with a practiced smile. "Ah, Monsieur Poirot, you have arrived. Welcome to Rajpore." Poirot bowed slightly. "Madame, it is a pleasure." He noted her elegance, the rustle of her gown, and the faint shadow of unease in her eyes. Lady Margaret Thorne, the gracious hostess with secrets of her own. Sir Reginald cleared his throat, his expression shifting to polite formality. "Monsieur Poirot, allow me to introduce Prince Vikram Singh of Rajpore." The prince inclined his head, his charm masking a clenched jaw. "A warm welcome, Monsieur Poirot. I trust your journey was pleasant." "Most agreeable, thank you," Poirot replied, filing away the prince's suppressed anger for later consideration. Lady Margaret gestured to the table set for tea. "Please join us. The others are eager to meet you." The veranda stretched before them, its view of manicured lawns and hazy hills framed by a punkah fan swaying overhead, stirred by an unseen hand. The tea was a delicate Darjeeling, its aroma mingling with the spices of samosas and the cool freshness of cucumber sandwiches on silver platters. As Poirot settled into a wicker chair, his sharp gaze swept over the company. A young man with a quick, nervous smile adjusted his cufflinks, gold, too fine for an aide's salary, before offering a nod. "Charles Langley, sir. Delighted." His glance darted toward Lady Margaret, lingering a fraction too long. A woman with poised efficiency poured tea, her movements calm amidst the undercurrents. "Good day, Monsieur Poirot," she said, her Oxford-accented English crisp, her dark eyes assessing. Eliza Patel, the Indian secretary, exuded a quiet dignity that intrigued him. A faint scent of sandalwood clung to her sleeve. Perfume, or something more? A booming voice interrupted his thoughts. "Heard of you, Poirot. Fine reputation." A broad-shouldered man with a weathered face leaned forward, his left hand gesturing expansively. Colonel James Whittaker, a military relic, his joviality tinged with bitterness. "What brings a detective like you here, eh? Not trouble, I hope?" Poirot smiled blandly. "Merely a holiday, Colonel, though trouble, it seems, has a way of finding me." Whittaker grunted, drumming his fingers on the table. "Well, if it comes, it'll be from certain quarters." He shot a pointed look at Prince Singh, who gazed out at the gardens, his profile etched with frustration. A lean figure in a crisp uniform approached, his demeanor alert. "An honor, sir," he said with a nod. Inspector Ravi Sharma's eyes scanned the group with professional detachment, missing nothing. As the tea progressed, Poirot's little grey cells hummed. Langley's nervous energy clashed with Eliza's steady composure. Lady Margaret exchanged a tense, hushed word with Sir Reginald, their strain palpable. Colonel Whittaker's anecdotes carried barbs aimed at the resident, who responded with tight-lipped courtesy. Prince Singh's charm veiled a simmering defiance. A distant rumble of thunder underscored the discord, the air thick with more than the promise of rain. Poirot sipped his tea, cataloguing every glance, every word. The residency was a polished facade, but beneath it secrets simmered. The game, he knew, had begun. Chapter 2. Whispers in the Dark. The ballroom of the British Residency in Rajpore shimmered with a splendor that rivaled the courts of Europe, its crystal chandeliers scattering golden light across a sea of swirling silk saris and starched tuxedos. The cool, polished marble floor mirrored the dance of east and west, a lilting waltz, entwined with the rhythmic pulse of the tabla, a harmony as fragile as it was enchanting. Crimson silk drapes framed the tall windows, admitting the humid breath of the night, scented with rosewater and shadowed by the distant growl of thunder. Glasses clinked, fans fluttered, and laughter rose in waves. Yet beneath the revelry lingered a tension, sharp and unseen, like a blade poised to fall. Hercule Poirot stood near the entrance, a small, impeccable figure in his white dinner jacket, his military moustache a testament to precision. His green eyes swept the room with quiet intensity, absorbing every detail. He did not join the dancers or the chatter. He observed, his little grey cells humming with the patterns of human nature. "A tableau vivant," he murmured to himself, "where every gesture tells a tale." The evening unfolded before him like a play. Lady Margaret Thorne glided through the throng, her silk gown whispering elegance, her smile a fragile mask. As she passed a cluster of guests, her gaze darted toward the doors, expectant, perhaps fearful, and her hand trembled faintly as she raised her champagne glass. Nearby, Charles Langley entertained a knot of young officers, his gold cufflinks glinting as he gestured with practiced wit. Laughter greeted his words, but Poirot caught the anxious flicker in his eyes, the way they sought Lady Margaret with a longing too intense for mere politeness. Amid the bustle, Miss Eliza Patel moved with quiet grace, adjusting a vase of marigolds here, directing a servant with a subtle nod there. Her efficiency steadied the chaos, and when her dark eyes briefly met Poirot's, they were steady, unreadable, a calm surface over unknown depths. From a corner, Colonel James Whittaker's voice boomed, cutting through the delicate clatter of crystal. "In my day, we tamed this land with grit," he declared, his left hand sweeping broadly as he spun tales of the Raj for a captive audience. His laughter rang out, but a sour edge lingered, sharp as stale cigar smoke. The room shifted as the Maharaja of Rajpore entered, a regal figure in gold brocade, commanding attention without effort. Prince Vikram Singh, resplendent in a gold-embroidered kurta, bowed with fluid grace beside him. The Maharaja raised a glass in toast. "To the harmony of our peoples," he intoned, his voice smooth as velvet, yet his frosty glance toward Sir Reginald Thorne belied the sentiment. The resident returned a stiff nod, his smile a taut line, and Poirot noted the strain, a diplomatic thread stretched near to breaking. Lady Beatrice Hargrove fluttered to Poirot's side, her lace fan a shield for her whispers. "Monsieur Poirot," she breathed, her eyes gleaming. "Do you see how Langley watches Margaret? They say it's an affair, hushed up for propriety. And Whittaker, always muttering about some old disgrace tied to Reginald." Poirot inclined his head, his face bland. "Most illuminating, madame," he replied, tucking her words away like treasures. Victoria Blackwood approached next, a journalist with a notebook discreetly palmed, her smile bright with curiosity. "A dazzling night, Monsieur Poirot. Any thoughts?" He met her gaze with a twinkle. "A tapestry, madame, woven with threads of intrigue." She pressed gently. "Anything amiss?" He shrugged. "One observes, and the truth emerges in its own time." As Poirot drifted through the crowd, he paused near a quieter corner where Sir Reginald and Colonel Whittaker stood, their voices low but charged. "You can't bury 95 forever, Thorne," Whittaker hissed, his face flushed, his left hand clenched. "This is neither the time nor place," Sir Reginald countered, his tone icy, before turning away with a sharp stride. Moments later, on the veranda where jasmine thickened the air, Poirot glimpsed Prince Singh facing Sir Reginald. "This treaty is an insult to my people," the prince said, his words clipped. "The crown's will prevails, Your Highness," Sir Reginald replied, unyielding. The prince's eyes flashed, and he withdrew with a curt bow, leaving a heavy silence. Back within the ballroom's glow, Poirot caught sight of Langley and Lady Margaret in a shadowed nook. His hand rested on her arm, a touch too lingering, too intimate. "We must be cautious," she whispered, her voice threaded with fear. Langley nodded, his face tight, and Poirot turned aside, the moment lodged in his memory. As the clock struck 11, Sir Reginald approached his wife. "I must attend to urgent papers in my study," he said, his stern features a mask. Lady Margaret inclined her head, her composure brittle. "Of course, dear." His footsteps echoed down the corridor, a crisp retreat from the festivity. The music swelled, the dancers spun on, yet Poirot felt a chill, a whisper of discord beneath the harmony. He stood watchful, the scent of rosewater and the distant thunder his silent companions. Something stirred in Rajpore's gilded heart, and Hercule Poirot knew the storm was near. Chapter 3. A Fateful Discovery. The ballroom's gaiety shattered in an instant, as though a pane of glass had been struck by an unseen hand. A piercing wail sliced through the strains of the waltz, abrupt and anguished, echoing from the corridor beyond. The dancers faltered, their steps arrested mid-turn. The chatter ceased, as if throttled. A servant's cry, high, raw, and laden with terror, drew every eye. Guests exchanged bewildered glances, then surged as one toward the sound, their finery rustling like leaves in a storm. Hercule Poirot, ever alert, moved with them, his small figure cutting through the throng, his eyes scanning faces flushed with curiosity and dread. The study door stood ajar, a mute invitation to horror. Within, a scene of grim disarray greeted them. Sir Reginald Thorne lay slumped across his mahogany desk, his stern face drained to an ashen pallor, his lifeless eyes fixed in an eternal stare. From his back protruded the hilt of a jeweled dagger, its blade buried deep, a dark stain blooming across his evening coat and seeping onto the polished wood beneath. Papers lay strewn across the floor, scattered like fallen petals. An inkstand rested overturned, its black contents pooling into the carpet's weave. A brass lamp teetered on the desk's edge, its shade askew, casting jagged shadows that danced upon the walls in the flickering light. Lady Margaret Thorne stood framed in the doorway, one hand clutching her throat, her face white as the marble of the hall. A faint gasp escaped her lips, and she swayed, her composure fracturing like fine porcelain. Beside her, Charles Langley halted mid-step, his eyes wide with a shock that bordered on terror. Or was it something else? Prince Vikram Singh lingered at the threshold, his dark gaze narrowing, his expression a mask of regal inscrutability. The other guests pressed behind, their murmurs rising into a tide of horror. Gasps, stifled cries, the rustle of silk as they recoiled from the sight. Amidst this tumult, Hercule Poirot remained an island of calm. He stepped forward, his movements deliberate as a clock's tick, and knelt beside the body. His keen eyes swept over the scene with meticulous care. The dagger's hilt, ornate with the Maharaja's crest, gleamed ostentatiously in the lamplight, a weapon too grand for so grim a task. Poirot noted the blade's angle, a thrust from behind, delivered with force, likely by a left-handed hand. In Sir Reginald's clenched fist, a torn scrap of paper protruded. With gentle precision, Poirot pried it free. The ink was smudged, yet the words were legible. The truth must not. A fragment, tantalizing and incomplete. He paused, his nostrils flaring slightly. A faint whiff of sandalwood hung in the air, an exotic note, discordant amidst the study's familiar scents of cigar smoke and aged leather. It was out of place, a whisper of something foreign in this bastion of British order. Poirot's gaze flickered upward, assessing, cataloguing. A firm voice cut through the chaos. "Everyone, step back. This is now a crime scene." Inspector Ravi Sharma pushed forward, his lean frame authoritative, his tone steady as iron. He gestured sharply to the servants hovering at the edges, their faces pale with fear. "Seal the room. No one enters without my command." The crowd parted reluctantly, their murmurs swelling anew. Poirot rose, his compact form straightening with purpose. His eyes swept the room once more, lingering on the window. It stood ajar, its curtains swaying faintly in the humid breeze that carried the distant rumble of thunder. A smudge of dirt marred the sill, fresh, irregular, a silent testament to passage. He tilted his head, filing the detail away, his little grey cells already whirring with possibility. The air grew thick with the scent of blood and fear, the study a tableau of death frozen in time. Poirot stood silent, his calm a stark contrast to the guests' disarray. The puzzle had begun, its pieces scattered before him, dagger, paper, scent, and dirt, each a thread in a tapestry he alone could weave. The investigation beckoned, and Hercule Poirot, with his unerring precision, was poised to answer its call. Chapter 4. Shadows of Doubt. As the first frail light of dawn pierced the heavy curtains of the British Residency, Hercule Poirot stood motionless in the study, his keen eyes traversing the silent aftermath of Sir Reginald Thorne's demise. The room, now a shrine to a crime, bore the weight of its secrets in every shadow. The air hung thick with the metallic tang of blood, undercut by a faint, persistent whisper of sandalwood, a scent as elusive as it was incongruous. Inspector Ravi Sharma stood sentinel at the door, his lean frame taut, his dark eyes following Poirot's every move with unspoken trust. Poirot approached the desk where Sir Reginald had met his end, the body now borne away, leaving only the dagger, a jeweled relic of the Maharaja's court, to mark the tragedy. He crouched, his small hands poised above the weapon, not touching, merely observing. The blade's angle spoke plainly to him. A thrust from behind, delivered with force and precision, its trajectory slanting leftward. "A left-handed strike," he murmured, his voice a soft ripple in the stillness, confirming a detail that sharpened the edges of his inquiry. His gaze shifted to the floor, where a scuff mark scarred the polished wood near the desk. A hasty drag of a shoe, perhaps, or a sign of resistance. He traced its path with a finger, noting its arc toward the window, ajar and swaying with the humid breath of morning. Beneath a chair, a glint caught his eye. He retrieved a broken cufflink, its gold surface etched with a delicate pattern. He turned it in his palm, his mind alighting on Langley's finery, then Whitaker's military relics. Whose might this be? The torn scrap of paper, wrested from Sir Reginald's grasp, now rested in Poirot's pocket for later scrutiny under brighter light. For now, the sandalwood scent held his attention. He closed his eyes, inhaling deeply, the fragrance a thread that did not belong among the British trappings of leather and cigar smoke. It hinted at an intruder, or a deception. Rising with purpose, Poirot turned to Sharma. "Inspector, I shall begin the interviews. The mind, it retains its freshest impressions at dawn." Sharma inclined his head. "They await you, Monsieur Poirot." Lady Margaret Thorne sat in the drawing-room, a velvet sofa her fragile throne, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles gleamed white. Poirot entered with a bow, his tone velvet soft yet edged with intent. "Madame, you remained in the ballroom all evening, yes?" She nodded, her voice steady as glass. "Yes, among the guests. I did not stray." Poirot tilted his head, a faint smile playing at his lips. "Yet a servant saw you in the garden not long before the tragedy." Her breath caught, her eyes darting like a trapped bird's. I sought air. The heat was stifling. I returned at once." Poirot's gaze lingered on her trembling fingers, noting the faint quiver that betrayed her calm. "Of course, madame. The heat can be most persuasive." He paused, his voice softening as if to coax a confession. "Tell me, did you notice anything unusual upon your return?" Lady Margaret hesitated, her composure fraying at the edges. I saw Mr. Langley near the terrace. He seemed agitated." Poirot's eyes glinted with interest. "Agitated, you say? How so?" "He was pacing, muttering to himself," she replied, her voice dropping to a near whisper. "I thought little of it at the time." "Most intriguing," Poirot murmured, his fingers brushing his moustache as he filed the detail away. "And your husband? Did he speak of any troubles before retiring to his study?" Her lips tightened, a shadow crossing her pale face. "He mentioned a pressing matter but gave no details. He was distant, as always." Poirot leaned forward slightly, his tone gentle yet probing. "Distant, yes. But was there perhaps a name, a hint, that slipped from his lips?" She shook her head, her fingers twisting the fabric of her dress. "No, Monsieur Poirot. He kept his counsel, as he often did." Poirot nodded, his expression sympathetic yet unconvinced. "A man of duty indeed. Thank you, madame." Charles Langley stood in the library, his face pale beneath a sheen of sweat that belied the morning's chill. He shifted as Poirot approached, his smile a twitch of nerves. "Monsieur Langley, you were with the guests, yes?" Langley nodded too eagerly, his hands fluttering like restless moths. "Indeed, chatting with the officers. I never left their sight." Poirot's eyes narrowed, cat-like in their scrutiny. A servant notes you were absent for a time. The smile faltered, Langley's fingers brushing his cufflinks. One missing, Poirot observed with a flicker of satisfaction. I stepped to the terrace. A cigarette, nothing more. Poirot made a soft, contemplative sound, his gaze unyielding. A brief respite, then. He gestured to Langley's wrist with a delicate flick of his hand. I see your cufflink is missing, monsieur. Langley's hand jerked back as if stung, his voice sharpening. It must have fallen off. I hadn't noticed. Such things happen, Poirot said smoothly, his tone deceptively mild. Tell me, did you see anyone near the study during your respite? Langley swallowed hard, his eyes darting to the window. I thought I saw a shadow by the window, but it was dark. Probably nothing. Poirot's gaze sharpened, pinning Langley in place. A shadow, you say? Male or female? I couldn't tell. Langley stammered, his composure slipping. It was fleeting. Just a trick of the light, perhaps. Most curious, Poirot mused, his fingers steepled before him. And your conversation with the officers, what topics enthralled them so? Langley blinked, caught off guard by the shift. Oh, the usual. Politics, sport, nothing of note. Poirot smiled thinly, his eyes gleaming with unspoken suspicion. Of course, monsieur. The usual, thank you. Miss Eliza Patel sat at her desk in the secretary's office, her posture a line of steel, her gaze unwavering as Poirot entered. Mademoiselle, you were at work during the ball. She nodded, her voice cool as marble. Yes, sorting documents. I remained here. Poirot leaned forward, his tone gentle yet piercing. A clerk says you stepped away. Her calm held firm, her hands resting still on the desk. I fetched a file from the library, a moment's absence. Poirot studied her, intrigued by her unshakable stillness. A moment can hold many secrets, mademoiselle. He paused, his nostrils flaring slightly as he caught the faint scent of sandalwood clinging to her sleeve. You favor sandalwood, I see. Her lips curved into a slight, controlled smile. A personal preference, Monsieur Poirot. It calms the mind. Indeed, Poirot said, his own smile enigmatic. Did you notice anything unusual during your brief absence? Miss Patel's gaze remained steady, unblinking. The corridor was quiet. I saw no one. Poirot tilted his head, his voice dropping to a near whisper. And the file? What was its nature? Routine correspondence, she replied, her tone unflinching. Nothing of consequence. Routine, yet urgent enough to fetch during a ball, Poirot observed, his eyes tracing her face for the slightest crack. Most diligent, mademoiselle. Tell me, did you hear anything? A sound, perhaps, from the study? Her fingers tightened imperceptibly on the desk's edge. No, monsieur. All was silent. Poirot nodded, his expression thoughtful. Silence, too, can speak. Thank you, mademoiselle. Colonel James Whittaker occupied the smoking room, a haze of cigar smoke curling about him as Poirot approached. His left hand gripped the cigar with a soldier's vigor, the ember flaring with each brusque puff. Colonel, you were here with your comrades? Whittaker grunted, his face ruddy beneath a bristle of whiskers. Aye, swapping yarns, never budged. Poirot raised an eyebrow, his tone light yet pointed. A fellow officer saw you leave briefly. The colonel's jaw tightened, his left hand flexing around the cigar. Stuffy in here. Took a breath outside. Back in a tick. Poirot nodded, his eyes lingering on that left-handed grip. A tick, Colonel, can be an eternity. He gestured casually to the cigar. You favor your left hand, I see. Whittaker's eyes narrowed, a glint of defiance in them. Old habit. What of it? Nothing, Colonel. Merely an observation, Poirot replied, his tone airy but his gaze piercing. Did you see anyone near the study during your breath of air? Whitaker exhaled a thick cloud of smoke, his voice gruff. Saw Langley skulking about, looked furtive, if you ask me. Poirot's interest piqued, his head tilting slightly. Furtive, you say? In what manner? Kept glancing over his shoulder like a man with something to hide, Whitaker grumbled, tapping ash onto the floor. But I've no proof. Proof, Colonel, is what we seek, Poirot said, his smile faint yet knowing. Skulking, you say. Did he move toward the study? Whitaker shrugged, his broad shoulders hunching. Couldn't say. Too far off. But he wasn't strolling, that's certain. Poirot's eyes twinkled with quiet satisfaction. Most helpful, Colonel. Thank you for your candor. Prince Vikram Singh stood on the veranda, his regal silhouette framed by dawn's glow. He turned as Poirot approached, his smile a mask of courtesy over a flicker of wariness. Your Highness, you danced the night away? The prince's eyes gleamed, his voice smooth as silk. With the Baroness, yes. Many saw me. Poirot's tone was light, probing beneath the surface. A footman places you near the study earlier. The smile stiffened, a muscle twitching in the prince's jaw. I passed by en route to the ballroom. A mere detour. Poirot bowed slightly, his eyes never leaving the prince's face. A detour, Your Highness, may lead anywhere. He paused, his voice taking on a delicate edge. The treaty dispute with Sir Reginald, it weighed heavily, yes? The prince's jaw tightened further, his hands clasping behind his back. It was a matter of honor. But I did not kill him, Monsieur Poirot. Of course, Poirot said, his tone soothing yet unconvinced. Yet the dagger bears your crest. A clumsy attempt to implicate me, the prince replied sharply, his eyes flashing. I'm not so foolish as to leave my own blade behind. Poirot's fingers brushed his moustache, his expression thoughtful. Indeed, Your Highness. A clever man does not sign his work so boldly. He leaned closer, his voice dropping. Did you see anyone else near the study during your detour? The prince hesitated, then shook his head. No one. The hall was empty. Empty, Poirot echoed, his smile faint. Thank you, Your Highness. Captain Arthur Sinclair stood in the garden, his uniform crisp, his brow creased with unease, as Poirot approached. Captain, you saw a figure near the study? Sinclair nodded, his hands clasped tightly behind him. Yes, but I thought it a lovers' meeting. I did not interfere. Poirot's gaze sharpened, his tone insistent. Describe this figure. Tall, in European dress, Sinclair said, frowning as he searched his memory. The light was poor. Male or female? Poirot pressed, stepping closer. Sinclair shook his head, his voice uncertain. I couldn't say. They moved quickly toward the terrace. Poirot's mind raced, tracing silhouettes, Langley's lanky frame, Whitaker's broad stance, perhaps even Lady Margaret's hurried grace. Quickly, you say. Did they carry anything? A glint of metal, perhaps? Sinclair's brow furrowed deeper. No, monsieur. It was too dark. I only saw the outline. Poirot nodded, his expression inscrutable. Most intriguing, Captain. Tell me, did you hear anything? A cry, a shuffle? Sinclair hesitated, then shook his head. Nothing. The music from the ballroom drowned all else. Thank you, Captain, Poirot said, his mind already weaving the threads of Sinclair's account into the broader tapestry. In the corridor, Inspector Sharma drew near, His voice hushed. "Monsieur, there are whispers of a treaty dispute, Sir Reginald and the Maharaja at odds." Poirot's eyes sparkled with sudden clarity. "A political thread, then?" Sharma nodded, his expression grave. "The dagger's crest suggests it." "Or wishes us to believe it," Poirot mused, stroking his moustache with a delicate finger. Pacing the residency's corridors, past stern portraits and potted palms, Poirot pondered. The sandalwood scent tugged at him, rare among these British souls, yet familiar. Miss Patel's calm precision, Langley's nervous flutters, Whitaker's gruff defiance, the prince's regal indignation. Each thread wove into a pattern, yet the design remained tantalizingly incomplete. He paused before Sir Reginald's portrait, its eyes cold and unyielding. The game was afoot, and Hercule Poirot would unravel it with the patience of a master weaver. Chapter 5. The Hidden Agendas. The British residency in Rajpore pulsed with a restless undercurrent, its polished corridors echoing with the soft rustle of whispers and the heavy silence of secrets yet unspoken. The murder of Sir Reginald Thorne had ignited a firestorm of speculation among its inhabitants, yet Hercule Poirot traversed this chaos with the serene composure of a man well acquainted with the unravelling of human nature. His diminutive, impeccably neat figure seemed almost to glide through the clamour, his green eyes alight with the quiet assurance of one who placed unwavering faith in his little grey cells. He commenced his inquiries in the orderly haven of Miss Eliza Patel's office, a bastion of precision amid the residency's tumult. Towering shelves of files stood like silent guardians along the walls, each label penned in her meticulous script. She sat poised at her desk, her dark eyes meeting his with steady calm, a faint trace of sandalwood perfume lingering in the air, a detail Poirot noted with the care of a connoisseur. "Mademoiselle," he greeted with a courteous incline of his head, "I require access to the financial records, if you would be so kind." Miss Patel rose with fluid grace, her voice as cool and smooth as the marble beneath their feet. "Of course, Monsieur Poirot. They are kept here." She gestured toward a polished cabinet, stepping aside to grant him passage. Poirot's nimble fingers flitted through the files until they settled upon a ledger inscribed Residency Accounts. He opened it, his gaze narrowing as he traced the orderly columns of figures. There, woven into the neat rows, a pattern revealed itself, modest sums withdrawn with curious regularity, each entry initialed CL, Charles Langley. "An intriguing discovery," Poirot murmured, casting a sidelong glance at Miss Patel. "These withdrawals, they were not authorized, I take it." Her lips tightened into a thin line, though her composure remained unshaken. "Sir Reginald had grown suspicious, monsieur. He intended to confront Mr. Langley on the matter." "A confrontation," Poirot mused, closing the ledger with a muted thud. "That might provoke a man to acts most desperate, n'est-ce pas?" Miss Patel's gaze held his, unflinching. "Perhaps, Monsieur Poirot, but desperation has many masters." "Indeed," he replied, a faint smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "And I shall endeavour to know them all." Later that morning, Poirot entered the drawing-room, where Lady Beatrice Hargrove reclined upon a velvet sofa, her lace fan fluttering with the delicate vigour of a hummingbird's wings. Her eyes sparkled with the relish of one who fed upon the residency's whispered intrigues. "Monsieur Poirot," she exclaimed, leaning forward with eager delight. "What a dreadful affair this is! In my day we had no such excitements to stir the blood." Poirot inclined his head, his tone as smooth as polished silk. "The past, madame, is often kinder in memory, but the present, it holds a fascination all its own. You mentioned certain intimacies, I believe?" Lady Beatrice's fan stilled for a moment, her voice sinking to a conspiratorial murmur. Oh, yes. Margaret and Langley, they've been thick as thieves of late. Whispers in shadowed corners, stolen glances across crowded rooms. Her marriage to Sir Reginald was a frigid affair, you understand. Poirot's eyes gleamed, though his expression remained studiously neutral. Frigid, you say? And this closeness, you have witnessed it with your own eyes. Witnessed? She chuckled, her fan resuming its lively dance. I saw them in the garden only last week, their heads bent together like lovers plotting in secret. And at the ball their gazes met far too often to be mere coincidence. Most illuminating, Poirot said, his mind threading this revelation into the intricate tapestry of suspicion he was weaving. A heart starved of warmth may seek it elsewhere, and silence any who threaten to expose its clandestine flame. Lady Beatrice nodded, her smile wise and knowing. Love, Monsieur Poirot, is a game fraught with peril. Returning to Miss Patel's office, Poirot turned his keen scrutiny upon the secretary herself. She stood by the window, her silhouette framed against the hazy expanse of the gardens beyond, her serene demeanour a fortress he sought to gently probe. Mademoiselle, he began, his voice light yet edged with intent, your efficiency is most admirable. But I wonder, does your loyalty stretch beyond the confines of this residency? Her eyes met his, steady as ever, though her fingers tightened imperceptibly around the pen she held. I serve the residency, Monsieur Poirot. Poirot tilted his head, his tone softening into a velvet caress. And yet there are whispers of a reform group, a breath of nationalism. Your education, your poise, they suggest a woman of ideals, yes? A faint smile curved her lips, cool and measured. I am a secretary, monsieur, not a revolutionary. Perhaps, he conceded, his gaze lingering on her composed features. But ideals can burn as fiercely as any passion. Did Sir Reginald's policies chafe against such principles? Her voice carried a quiet edge, like the glint of steel beneath silk. His policies were unyielding. But I wield no dagger, Monsieur Poirot. Poirot nodded, his smile thoughtful. No, mademoiselle, I think not. Yet secrets, they cling like shadows, do they not? In the medical office, Dr. Evelyn Patel attended to her duties with quiet precision, her Anglo-Indian heritage a subtle bridge between the residency's divided worlds. Poirot found her bandaging a servant's hand, her movements deft and assured. Doctor, he greeted, his tone warm with genuine respect. I seek your insight into Colonel Webber's past. Her hands paused mid-motion, her dark eyes lifting to meet his. The Colonel is a proud man, Monsieur Poirot, but that pride bears the scars of old wounds. Poirot leaned closer, his voice dropping to a confidential murmur. A court-martial, I understand. Sir Reginald's testimony sealed his fate. Dr. Patel nodded, her expression sombre. Years ago, yes. The Colonel lost much. His rank, his honour. Sir Reginald's recent taunts tore open those scars anew. And such a wound, Poirot pressed, his gaze piercing, might it fester into an act of violence? She hesitated, her loyalty wrestling with her candour. He has a temper, certainly, but murder, I cannot say. Poirot offered a faint, appreciative smile. Your prudence is commendable, Doctor. Yet the truth, it waits for no one. The afternoon brought Poirot to the opulent reception hall of the Maharaja of Rajpore, a chamber resplendent with the grandeur of the East. The Maharaja sat enthroned upon a dais, his presence a vivid tapestry of gold and authority. His turban shimmered with threads of silver, catching the light of the chandeliers overhead, while his dark eyes, sharp as a hawk's, regarded the detective with measured curiosity. The air was thick with the scent of jasmine and the distant hum of a sitar, lending the scene an almost theatrical weight. "Your Highness," Poirot began with a precise bow, his voice carrying the deference due to royalty, "I come to inquire about the treaty dispute between Prince Sing and Sir Reginald." The Maharaja's lips thinned, his voice rolling forth like the low rumble of thunder. "The resident sought to wrest from us what is ours by right, Monsieur Poirot. The prince opposed him. A matter of heritage, of blood." Poirot's fingers brushed his moustache, his tone neutral yet insistent. "And this opposition, it grew heated, perhaps?" "Passionate," the Maharaja corrected, his gaze unwavering as he leaned slightly forward. "The prince spoke with fire, yes, but he is no fool to strike so rashly in the open." "The dagger bears your crest," Poirot observed, his voice soft as a breeze stirring the heavy drapes. The Maharaja's hand tightened on the arm of his throne, his tone sharpening with disdain. "A crude jest, monsieur, or a deliberate slight. Too blatant for the prince's cunning." Poirot inclined his head, his mind sparking with new connections. "Indeed, Your Highness. Obviousness. It is a clue of its own, is it not?" The Maharaja's eyes narrowed, a flicker of respect passing through them. "You see much, little man." "Oui," Poirot replied, his smile subtle. "It is my habit to observe where others merely look." As he took his leave, the weight of the encounter settled upon him. The Maharaja's regal indignation, the unspoken tension of a kingdom pressed beneath the heel of colonial ambition. The treaty dispute was no mere footnote. It was a vein of motive running deep beneath the surface. Later, in the dim quiet of Sir Reginald's study, Poirot set about a methodical search. The room was a mausoleum of the resident's life, mahogany shelves laden with leather-bound tomes, a desk strewn with papers, the faint tang of ink and cigar smoke lingering in the air. He moved with purpose, his fingers tracing the edges of drawers, lifting ledgers and sifting through correspondence with the patience of a man who knew the truth often hid in the smallest crevice. At length, beneath a stack of mundane reports, his hand brushed a single sheet of parchment, its edges crisp, its ink bold. A letter penned in the forceful script of Prince Sing. "Your policies strangle us," it declared, each word a lash of controlled fury. "Our heritage will not bend to your will." Poirot's breath caught as he read, the pulse of motive thrumming beneath the prince's words. Yet the prince's alibi, vouched for by the Maharaja's court, remained a tantalizing enigma. He set the letter aside, its discovery no accident, but the fruit of his deliberate pursuit, a thread now woven firmly into the fabric of his investigation. Cross-referencing alibis, Poirot summoned a footman, a wiry youth named Anil, whose nervous demeanor betrayed his unease. The boy stood before him, twisting his hands, his voice trembling as he spoke. "I saw Mr. Langley, Sahib, near the study, before the scream. He looked pale, his hands shaking like leaves in a storm." Poirot's tone was gentle yet firm, coaxing truth from fear. "Shaking, you say? Did he carry anything in those trembling hands?" Anil shook his head, his eyes wide with earnestness. "No, Sahib, but he seemed afraid, as if he'd seen a ghost." "Afraid," Poirot echoed, his gaze drifting inward. "A detail most revealing, mon jeune ami." In the dining room, Mrs. Victoria Blackwood intercepted Poirot, her notebook brandished like a journalist's sword. "Monsieur Poirot, what of Sir Reginald's enemies beyond these walls? Bombay, perhaps? A wider conspiracy?" Poirot's smile was polite, yet faintly dismissive. "The truth, madame, nests closer to home. The residency breeds its own serpents." She pressed on, undeterred, her eyes alight with curiosity. But the treaty, could it not summon wrath from afar? "The dagger speaks otherwise," Poirot countered, his tone resolute. "Its crest points inward, to those within our grasp." As twilight cloaked the residency in shadow, Poirot paced its corridors, his mind a whirl of motives. Langley's greed, Lady Margaret's forbidden love, Miss Patel's quiet ideals, Colonel Weber's festering grudge, Prince Singh's wounded honor. Each strand tightened the knot of suspicion, yet the final pattern remained elusive. He paused before Sir Reginald's portrait, its stern visage gazing down in silent mockery. "You knew their secrets," he whispered, his voice a thread of sound in the stillness. "But which one wielded the blade?" The answer lingered, tantalizingly close, a puzzle awaiting its final decisive piece. Chapter 6. The Silent Witness. The gardens of the British Residency sprawled beneath the relentless Indian sun, a cultivated oasis carved from Rajpore's untamed wildness. Roses spilled forth in crimson abundance near the study's shadowed walls, their fragrance a cloying sweetness that hung heavy in the humid air, mingling with the ceaseless drone of cicadas. Hercule Poirot advanced along the gravel path, his Panama hat tilted to shield his fastidious eyes from the glare, his polished shoes crunching softly with each deliberate step. He sought a figure who moved unseen amid the residency's pomp, a gardener named Ramu, whose quiet labor belied the secrets he might hold. There he stood, a wiry silhouette framed by thorny blooms, his hands deft and earth-stained as they coaxed life from the soil. Ramu's presence was a mere murmur in the grand symphony of colonial life, yet Poirot approached with the same courtesy he extended to lords and ladies alike. "Bonjour, monsieur," he said, his voice rising gently above the garden's hum, a note of warmth threading through his precise diction. Ramu straightened abruptly, his weathered cap clutched in trembling hands, his dark eyes widening with a flicker of alarm. "Sahib," he murmured, the word barely escaping as he twisted the cap, as though it might armor him against the small man's scrutiny. Poirot's smile was a calculated balm, disarming yet resolute. "You are Ramu, the gardener, yes? I am Hercule Poirot, and I come to you with a matter most grave. Your assistance, it is essential." The cap twisted tighter in Ramu's grip, his voice fraying like worn thread. "Yes, Sahib, I tend the roses, only the roses." "Précisément," Poirot replied, his gaze unwavering, a quiet intensity beneath his calm. "And on the night of the ball, mon ami, you were here, were you not? Near the study, tending your charges?" Ramu nodded, his eyes darting to the crimson blooms as though they might shield him from memory. "Yes, Sahib. I was pruning late, long after the music began." Poirot leaned closer, his tone softening to a velvet coax. "And you saw something, did you not? A figure, perhaps, gliding toward the study before the tragedy unfolded?" A tremor rippled through Ramu's slight frame, his words stumbling forth like reluctant confessions. I saw a man, Sahib, in a jacket and trousers, like the British Sahibs wear. He moved quick toward the study, like he did not wish to be seen." Poirot's pulse quickened, though his expression remained a mask of serene curiosity. "A European figure, you say? Tell me, could you discern his face, this fleeting shadow?" "No, Sahib," Ramu stammered, his cap now a mangled knot in his hands. "It was dark, too dark. Only his shape I saw, tall, swift, like a wind through the trees." "And this shape," Poirot pressed, his eyes gleaming with a hunter's focus. "Did it carry anything? A flash of metal, perhaps, or the weight of intent?" Ramu shook his head, his voice a whisper lost to the breeze. "I saw nothing, Sahib. Just him, moving like a ghost across the lawn." Poirot drew himself up, his mind weaving Ramu's words with Captain Sinclair's fleeting glimpse, a pattern emerging from the shadows. "You have observed well, Ramu," he said, his tone rich with approval. "The humble eye, it sees what pride obscures." Ramu's grip on his cap slackened, a faint relief softening his taut features. "Thank you, Sahib," he breathed, as though unburdened by the praise. Poirot turned to depart, the gravel crunching beneath his step, when Ramu's voice halted him once more. "Sahib, one thing more." He pivoted, his gaze piercing as a blade. "Speak, mon ami. What lingers in your memory?" Ramu hesitated, his whisper barely audible above the cicadas. "The man. He carried a scent, Sahib. Sandalwood, like the priests burn in their temples." Poirot's breath caught, the crime scene's elusive fragrance now a vivid thread stitching through the night's enigma. "Sandalwood, you say?" he murmured, his mind alight with possibility. "Most curious indeed." He inclined his head in a gesture of gratitude, leaving Ramu to his roses as he retraced his path through the garden, the weight of revelation settling upon him. The European figure, cloaked in darkness, trailing sandalwood like a signature. What did it mean? The little grey cells hummed with purpose as he moved toward the residency, each step a beat in the rhythm of deduction. The entrance hall greeted him with a stirring of punkah fans, their languid motion coaxing faint relief from the oppressive heat. Inspector Sharma stood waiting, his lean frame taut with the quiet vigilance of a man accustomed to shadows. His dark eyes brightened as Poirot approached, sensing the urgency in the detective's purposeful stride. "Inspector," Poirot said, his voice low and charged with intent, "we must examine Mr. Langley's quarters without delay. The gardener speaks of a European figure and sandalwood. The scent, it binds the threads." Sharma's brow furrowed, a flicker of doubt swiftly supplanted by resolve. "At once, Monsieur Poirot," he replied, falling into step beside the diminutive Belgian. They ascended the grand staircase together, their footfalls hushed by the plush carpet's intricate weave, a muted counterpoint to the clamour of Poirot's racing thoughts. Langley's rooms opened before them, a sanctuary of understated opulence, where polished mahogany gleamed beneath silk drapes, and the air held a faint tang of disarray. A writing desk stood askew, its surface marred by a spilled ink pot, papers scattered like the remnants of a hurried escape. Poirot's eyes swept the room, cataloguing every detail with meticulous care. "Search the drawers, Inspector," he directed, his tone crisp as he moved toward the wardrobe. Sharma nodded, his hands swift and practiced as he rifled through the desk's contents. Poirot's fingers brushed the fabric of jackets and trousers hanging in orderly rows, European attire indeed, their cut and cloth a silent echo of Ramu's testimony. A whisper of scent teased his senses, too faint to name, yet it lingered like a ghost in the air. A sharp intake of breath from Sharma drew him back. "Here, monsieur," the inspector said, his voice tight with discovery as he lifted a small vial from a drawer's shadowed depths, concealed beneath a neatly folded stack of linens. Poirot took it with reverence, uncorking it with the delicacy of a surgeon. The scent of sandalwood unfurled, sharp and unmistakable, a twin to the fragrance that had haunted the study's grim tableau. "Voilà," he murmured, his eyes alight with triumph. "The thread. It tightens." Sharma's gaze hardened, his words clipped. "This binds Langley to the scene, does it not?" "A knot, perhaps," Poirot replied, cradling the vial as though it were a fragile truth. "But not yet tied, mon ami. We proceed with method. Always with method." They lingered a moment longer, the room's silence pressing in around them, heavy with the weight of what they had found. Poirot's mind churned, the vial a pivot around which suspicion turned. Yet he knew the puzzle demanded more threads, more knots, more light to banish the shadows. Twilight draped the residency in muted hues as Poirot sought the library, its hushed glow a refuge from the day's clamour. He had contrived a moment of observation, and there stood Charles Langley at the desk, his pen scratching across a note with practised ease. Poirot lingered by a shelf, feigning interest in a leather-bound volume, his attention fixed on the man before him. Langley's left hand guided the pen, its motion fluid and assured, a detail that struck Poirot like a bell tolling in the stillness. Left-handed, he noted inwardly, the dagger's cruel slant aligning with chilling precision in his mind's eye. Langley turned, sensing the scrutiny, and Poirot stepped forward, his tone light as air. "A fine script, Monsieur Langley. A hand so steady. It betrays a certain character, does it not?" Langley's smile was thin, a brittle veneer over flickering unease. "Thank you, Monsieur Poirot," he said, his voice taut as a drawn bowstring. Poirot's gaze drifted to that left hand, noting the absence of a cufflink, a shadow of suspicion deepening. "Details, monsieur," he mused aloud. "They reveal so much, even when we wish them silent." Langley's fingers twitched, a fleeting betrayal of composure. "I must be off," he said abruptly, his tone clipped. "Naturellement," Poirot replied, his smile enigmatic as he inclined his head. "Duty, it calls to us all." As Langley retreated, Poirot remained, the library's quiet wrapping around him like a cloak. The left-handed flourish, the vial's damning scent, Rameau's shadowed figure, each piece pointed to Langley, yet the tapestry remained incomplete, its edges frayed by the motives of others, yet unexamined. The following morning, Poirot and Sharma ventured into Rajpore's bazaar, a labyrinth of life pulsing beneath the sun's unyielding gaze. Narrow lanes teemed with merchants and buyers, the air thick with the mingled scents of saffron, cardamom, and burning incense, the cries of hawkers weaving a tapestry of sound. Poirot moved through the throng with purpose, the vial tucked safely in his pocket, his senses drinking in the chaos as he sought a vendor of oils. They found him at last, a wizened figure seated amidst a constellation of bottles and vials, his hands gnarled as ancient roots, his eyes sharp with the wisdom of trade. Poirot approached, producing the vial with a flourish. "This, monsieur," he said, his voice cutting through the din. "You recognize it, yes?" The vendor squinted, his rasping voice a dry wind. "Yes, sahib. I sold such a vial. Sandalwood, pure and fine." "To whom?" Poirot pressed, his pulse quickening as the net drew tighter. "A British sahib," the vendor replied, his gaze shrewd and unyielding. "Tall, restless, like a man who carries secrets. He came often, always in haste." Poirot exchanged a glance with Sharma, the description a mirror to Langley's restless air. "And no name, I suppose?" he asked, though he anticipated the answer. The vendor shrugged, a faint smile curling his lips. "He paid in coin, sahib. Names, they mean little when the price is met." They withdrew from the bazaar, the clamour fading behind them as Poirot's mind wove the vendor's words into the growing fabric of evidence. A tall, restless Englishman, the scent of sandalwood trailing in his wake. It was a portrait taking shape, yet the frame remained elusive. Evening found Poirot in the residency's drawing room, its stillness a balm after the day's tumult. He sat in a high-backed chair, the puzzle's pieces swirling before his mind's eye like motes of dust in a sunbeam. Rameau's sighting of a European figure cloaked in darkness, the vial of sandalwood oil unearthed in Langley's quarters, the left-handed script that matched the dagger's fatal angle. All converged upon a single thread. Yet shadows lingered. Lady Margaret's brittle poise, Miss Patel's quiet fervour, Colonel Whitaker's smouldering resentment, Prince Singh's wounded honour. Each cast a doubt, a veil that obscured the truth's full form. Poirot's fingers drummed a rhythm on the chair's arm, his thoughts a storm contained within the order of his little grey cells. The resolution glimmered, tantalizingly near yet shrouded, a mirage on the horizon of reason. He rose, his small frame radiating resolve, his voice a whisper to the empty room. The truth, it hides not for long. The little grey cells, they shall prevail, as they always do. Chapter 7. The Veil Lifts. The drawing-room of the British Residency in Rajpore gleamed with a sombre opulence, its gilt-framed mirrors catching the unsteady flicker of chandelier light and casting it back upon the taut faces of those assembled. The velvet drapes hung heavy, their crimson folds absorbing the distant murmur of the monsoon's approach, while a faint scent of sandalwood lingered, a ghost of the crime that had brought them here. Hercule Poirot stood at the room's heart, his diminutive form a pillar of calm amidst the brewing storm, his green eyes alight with the certainty of revelation. With the assistance of the ever-vigilant Inspector Ravi Sharma, Poirot had orchestrated this gathering, ensuring that each suspect was present to witness the unravelling of the mystery. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, his voice a measured cadence that cut through the stillness, "we gather to unveil a truth most sinister. Sir Reginald Thorne met his end not by chance, but by a hand driven by greed and deceit." His gaze traversed the circle of suspects, each face a study in guarded apprehension. He turned first to Prince Vikram Singh, whose regal poise stood firm, despite the shadow of suspicion. "Your Highness, the dagger bore your crest, a bold accusation. Yet the Baroness and her fellow dancers affirm your presence on the floor. You did not wield this blade." The prince's jaw eased, his nod a silent acknowledgement, though his eyes remained watchful. Poirot's attention shifted to Miss Eliza Patel, her calm a fortress against the rising tide of scrutiny. "Mademoiselle Patel, your ideals whisper of rebellion, yet your records gleam with innocence. Your absence was fleeting, your hands clean of blood." Her lips parted in a faint, composed smile. "I am no murderer, Monsieur Poirot." "Non," he agreed, a twinkle in his eye. "Your war is fought with intellect, not steel." Next, he faced Colonel James Whitaker, whose ruddy cheeks flushed deeper under Poirot's gaze. "Colonel, your rancour towards Sir Reginald is an old flame, yet your absence was too brief. A mere puff of smoke, not time enough for murder." Whitaker snorted, his left hand clenching reflexively. "I've no taste for skulking about with daggers." "Exactement," Poirot said, his tone almost indulgent. "Your temper roars, but it does not strike." Lady Margaret Thorne sat frail and pale, her hands twisting in her lap like captive doves. Poirot's voice softened, though his intent remained sharp. "Madame, your heart aches. Your despair is true. Yet the act was not yours. Your lover, he took the stage, yes?" Her breath broke, her eyes flitting to Charles Langley, whose pallor deepened to a ghostly hue. "I never—" Poirot raised a hand, silencing her with gentle authority. "Your silence, it accuses another, madame." At last, he turned to Charles Langley, whose charming facade now flickered like a candle in a gale. "Monsieur Langley," Poirot said, his tone carrying an undercurrent of steel, "it is to you that we must now turn our attention." Langley straightened, his chin lifting with a flash of indignation. "Me? Surely, Monsieur Poirot, you jest. I was among the guests all evening. A gentleman does not skulk in shadows." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Ah, but were you?" Rameau, the gardener, saw a European figure, tall, swift, near the study before the murder. Langley's laugh was forced, a brittle sound that echoed in the tense air. A gardener's tale? Preposterous. In this residency, any number of us might fit such a vague description. I stepped out for a cigarette, hardly a crime. Perhaps not, Poirot conceded, his voice deceptively mild. But the vial of sandalwood oil found in your quarters, that is most curious, yes? The very scent that clung to the crime scene. Langley's face paled, yet he rallied, his tone sharp with offense. Sandalwood is ubiquitous here. I use it as a cologne, a personal habit, nothing more. To suggest it implicates me is an insult to reason. Poirot's gaze sharpened, unrelenting. And yet, when paired with other details, it begins to weave a pattern. You are left-handed, monsieur, are you not? Langley blinked, momentarily thrown, but recovered with a scoff. Yes, and what of it? Half the world might be so inclined. It proves nothing. The dagger, Poirot said, his voice dropping to a near whisper, was thrust with a left-handed strike, a detail most telling. A murmur rippled through the room. Langley's hands clenched, his voice rising in defiance. This is absurd. You build a case on coincidences, flimsy threads unfit to snare a man of my standing. Poirot remained unmoved, his tone cutting through the bluster. There is more, monsieur. The torn scrap of paper clutched in Sir Reginald's hand, the truth must not... It speaks of a secret he intended to reveal, a secret of financial misdeeds, yes? Langley's breath hitched, his eyes darting to Lady Margaret, who watched him with dawning horror. I know nothing of any paper or secrets. This is a fabrication. But you do, Poirot pressed, stepping closer, his presence a quiet force. Sir Reginald had uncovered your embezzlement of residency funds. He was poised to expose you, to shatter your ambitions. You could not permit that. Langley's composure cracked, sweat beading on his brow, yet he clung to denial. Lies! I am no thief, nor a murderer. You have no proof, only conjecture. Poirot's voice grew inexorable, each word a hammer strike. You saw an opportunity to silence him and shift the blame. The dagger with the Maharaja's crest, a clumsy attempt to frame Prince Singh, whose dispute with Sir Reginald was well known. Prince Singh's eyes blazed with indignation. You dare... Poirot silenced him with a raised hand, his focus locked on Langley. But the prince's alibi stands firm, vouched for by many. You, Monsieur Langley, had the motive, the means, and the opportunity. Langley's knees trembled, his voice a ragged plea as the weight of evidence bore down. I didn't mean... It was an impulse. He was going to ruin me. Lady Margaret's sob pierced the silence, her hands covering her face. Colonel Whitaker snorted, his voice a low growl. Coward. Poirot's gaze was unyielding, his tone final. You chose murder, monsieur, and cloaked it in another's honour. But the truth, it cannot be hidden from Hercule Poirot. Langley crumpled, his confession spilling forth in broken gasps. I took the funds, yes. Sir Reginald found out. He was going to expose me. I couldn't let him. I stabbed him, planted the dagger to point to Singh. I thought I could escape it. The room fell silent, the weight of his words settling like dust after a storm. Inspector Ravi Sharma stepped forward, his expression grim as he cuffed Langley's trembling wrists. Charles Langley, you are under arrest. As Sharma led him away, the drawing-room exhaled its tension. Lady Margaret buried her face in her hands, her sobs a mournful tide. Prince Singh stood tall, his dignity restored. Colonel Whitaker's disgust lingered in the stillness. Poirot stood apart, the storm beyond the windows now a gentle patter, the air cleansed of its secrets. The residency, a stage for betrayal, settled into uneasy peace. Chapter 8. echoes of the past. The dawn crept softly over Rajpore, its tender light veiled by the gentle tapping of monsoon rain upon the residence's roof. The air bore the fresh, earthy scent of a world newly cleansed, a tranquil counterpoint to the tempest of secrets that had raged through the night. Hercule Poirot stood upon the veranda, his diminutive form framed by the curling mist that drifted across the lawns like a sigh of parting. Beside him, Inspector Ravi Sharma cradled a porcelain teacup, his lean silhouette a quiet sentinel in the stillness. Poirot's gaze lingered on the gardens, where raindrops gleamed upon the hibiscus like jewels of a forgotten empire. "It is a marvel, Inspector," he said, his voice a murmur woven into the morning's hush. "How the rain purifies the earth, yet leaves the heart to wrestle with its shadows." Sharma's dark eyes turned to him, a spark of accord within their depths. "You speak of Langley's greed, Monsieur Poirot, a shadow most profound." "Oui," Poirot replied, his fingers tracing the edge of his cup with delicate precision. "Greed. It is a serpent that whispers of riches and dominion, yet consumes the spirit it vows to elevate. Langley's ruin. It is a mirror to a grander malaise, a veil of ambition draped across this colonial stage." Sharma nodded, his gaze drifting to the shrouded domes of Rajpore, half lost in the mist. "A stage where duty masks desire, yes. It is a tale writ in the stones of empire." A faint smile touched Poirot's lips. "And yet, mon ami, we have threaded justice through its fabric. Your perception, it has been a lantern in the fog. Our alliance, it spans more than continents. It is a symphony of intellect." Sharma's face softened, a rare warmth breaking through his reserve. "The privilege is mine, Monsieur Poirot. Your little grey cells, they are a wonder." Poirot chuckled, a glimmer of mirth in his eye. "They are but tools, Inspector, sharpened by the keen senses of those who see what pride conceals. Ramu, with his humble truth, it was he who turned the key." They stood in silence, the rain's soft cadence a balm to their reflections. The residency loomed at their backs, its majesty now softened by a quiet sorrow, as though it grieved the treachery it had sheltered. From the banyan trees birds trilled a fragile song, their notes threading through the mist. Poirot set his cup aside with a sigh. "The hour has come, Inspector. The enigma is unravelled, and I must take my leave. My holiday, it is marred, yet order prevails." Sharma extended a hand, his grip steady and sure. "Safe journey, monsieur. May your path shine as brightly as your mind." Poirot clasped it warmly, his tone rich with sincerity. "And may yours ever be guided by discernment, mon ami." Within his chambers, Poirot packed his valise with the meticulous care of a man wedded to method. The storm had passed, leaving the air renewed, yet a trace of melancholy lingered in his soul, a testament to humanity's fragile virtues. He paused at the window, where the lawn stretched verdant and vast, the mist a shroud over the residency's waning glory. Descending the grand staircase, he passed beneath the stern eyes of British portraits, their gazes now tinged with a silent rebuke. The entrance hall, once alive with discord, lay hushed, its marble floors echoing his steps like a mournful adieu. The Bentley awaited beyond the threshold, its engine a subdued murmur in the damp air. Poirot halted at the door, his eyes sweeping the grounds one final time. The rain had ceased, leaving the earth aglow, reborn. He tipped his hat to the servant bearing his valise, then stepped into the car, the door closing with a gentle thud. The drive to the station unfurled in hues of green and gold, the palms swaying as if in farewell. At the platform, the train stood poised, its steam rising like a promise of voyages yet unwritten. Poirot settled into his compartment, the window framing Rajpore's domes as they faded into the haze. He leaned back, his hands steepled, his thoughts a weave of insight. Imperial grandeur, he mused aloud. It is but a mantle for private sins. Yet the truth, it pierces through, as ceaseless as the monsoon's tide. The train surged forward, bearing him from Rajpore, yet the case's lessons clung to him, a quiet wisdom carved into his being. Hercule Poirot closed his eyes, the rail's rhythm a lullaby, and surrendered to a moment of repose. As the monsoon rains cleanse Rajpore, Hercule Poirot stands victorious, his little grey cells having pierced the veil of deception. The residence's secrets are laid bare, and justice prevails in the wake of a crime born of greed and betrayal. We hope this homage to Agatha Christie's legacy has honored her spirit of intrigue and captivated your imagination. If this mystery has sparked your curiosity, please like this episode and subscribe to Nocturnal Tales for more adventures in deduction. And if you feel like it, you can support our storytelling journey via our Buy Me a Coffee page, link in the description. Share your thoughts below. Did Poirot's brilliance outshine your own deductions? Thank you for joining us, and until our next tale, may your nights be filled with mystery and your days with clarity.